Hey everyone, my name is Ramon Baig. I'm CPO here at FlexFactor. Thanks for joining the webinar today to talk about the topic of decline recovery. We view the world that declines are not a dead end, and we have a new partnership with Spreedly that we're excited to talk about today. And so today we're going to have two of our esteemed panelists have a discussion with each other in terms of what this all looks like. And so I'll sort of introduce them and they'll take it away from there. Quick housekeeping item. Is that we'd like to have this to be a interactive conversation. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be in the background just ensuring that questions get answered in a timely manner. And then throughout, I'll be putting a couple poll questions out there as well. So please do respond. We'd love to hear your feedback, and let's see where we go from here. With that, I'll hand it over to Andy to take it off from here. Andy.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone, to the session today. For starters, my name's Andy McHale. I'm a senior director on the product team here at Spreedly. With me today is Zev. Zev, would you like to also introduce yourself?
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Zev Shovarla. I'm based in Tel Aviv, and I'm co-founder at FlexFactor.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Zev. So I think today we want to have, kind of a fluid conversation about declines and how that fits in with your orchestration strategy and how merchants can think about it inside of their payment stack. But maybe, just to kind of kickstart, Zev, do you want to give us a little insight on sort of like your industry and how you guys look at declines? Ramon gave us a little bit of an insight there of not thinking about declines as a dead end, but kind of where do you guys come from in your strategy and how do you just in general help merchants get back some of that lost revenue?
Great, yes. So actually, in order to go there, I will start with a quick background, how all this was started and evolved from the beginning. So all started just by a small mistake that decline payment happened once we called Uber and we wanted to go back home. And apparently the decline happened in an annoying moment. And from there, we started to explore the reason for the decline as a good customer of the bank. And we found enormous opportunity and a big problem in the payment industry. Apparently, hundreds of billions of dollars are declined in a year, only in the United States. So from there, we went to explore and understand what is behind. And we realized that payment decline is a big problem. It's a big problem for the merchant. The merchant lose the business. It's a big problem to the consumer that stay frustrated, sometimes really churn the store. And it is a problem for the entire payment ecosystem that stay without the transaction. So everyone suffer, and FlexFactor came with a very innovative solution to try and overcome and bring a relief to this industry.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I think you hit on something there that sometimes merchants don't always think about, which is that customer lifetime value aspect of if a customer receives a decline, even if it's perhaps a false positive, right, and it's an insult, that really can affect the merchant's ongoing relationship with that customer.
Absolutely. We see that about 30–40% of the consumers are actually churn the store upon decline. Different reasons stand behind, but at the end of the day, if you keep them at the consumer in the store, in the cart, and the consumer go home happy with the product to stay with the service, then if you look at the real-time transaction, consumer normally stay another 2 or 3 more transaction, at least another 2 or 3 more transaction with the merchant. But when you look into the subscription-based business, it is much more than that. It could be 6 and 7 and 8 cycles that bottom line affect long-time participation in the service of this merchant. So the lifetime is completely a big issue for the merchants here.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe if you could help us understand a little bit more, Zev, like one level deeper, kind of how does FlexFactor work in general, and how do you handle some of those decline scenarios for merchants?
Sure. So basically, when decline payment happen to consumer in a real-time transaction, the consumer see a pop-up and inform that the payment failed. It could be for insufficient funds. It could be for technical reason, fraud reason. So multiple issues that could affect and make a failure transaction. Apparently, when FlexFactor is in the equation, the moment that the decline happened, a millisecond before, we actually intercept the transaction and we reassess the consumer risk. And if our algorithm realize that the propensity of the consumer is to pay, then we are going back in real time through Spreadly gateway to the merchant, to the consumer, shipping the goods or keep render the service to the consumer. So apparently we react in real time to cure the decline. And that point of time, we're taking that responsibility for us to reprocess the transaction within the next 2 weeks, the latest. So what happens is that the consumers stay with the product, the merchants stay with the deal, and we're taking a risk to our side that within the next 2 weeks, we will charge the consumer for the full amount that originally was supposed to be charged by the merchant. When we're looking into the subscription equation, then it is not a real time, but still we're taking the transaction to us, we reassess it, and we come back to the merchant whether it is a good transaction or not, whether we buy the invoice from the merchant or not. At the end of the day, the impact is substantially important for the merchant and for the consumer.
I think one of the important things that I heard you say there is that it's a smart decision, right? You're not just randomly attempting a reauthorization or authorizing, above some of the thresholds that Visa and Mastercard have set. That there's intelligence behind it in determining when to retry. Is that correct?
Right. So basically, the decline payment industry cover different solutions today. There are some solutions that are mainly in the subscription segment. So in real time, we don't see any solution beside the solution that FlexFactor brought to the industry. This is smart dialing. This is a retry engine. Our approach is completely different. So we are going through a very sophisticated AI, an algorithm that assess the risk, that assess the consumer propensity to pay through different stages in the decision and the machine learning that at the end of the day indicate when do we want to take a transaction to FlexFactor. So at the end of the day, first we compare historical data to real-time data, we do data enrichment, we do different action that indicate for us whether it's a good, let's call it a good risk for us or not. And from that moment, we have another important component that actually we are going to reprocess the transaction, which is happening at a later point of time, not in the real-time moment. But then also we developed a very sophisticated routing system, let's call it orchestration, that will optimize the best way of clearing the transaction successfully.
Yeah, that's super interesting and really helpful for merchants in a number of different scenarios. And maybe I'll use that as a bit of a segue to one of my next questions of, you've talked about subscriptions a little bit, but are there particular merchant segments, maybe industries, or maybe even regions where you see more benefits or where you see the solution really providing the most value?
Yeah, so far we developed the solution to address the US industries. And when I say industries, it touched basically all segments. It could be fashion, it could be learning, it could be some cases of a little bit of mid-risk segments. But overall, we are looking at all type of card not present industries, US-based business. And on top of that, we are considering expansion, but this is something that probably will happen in the next year. So for now, the focus is very much in the US or North America, let's call it that way.
Got it. And there's no limitation from your side on different segments that aren't able to take advantage of the service. Is that right?
So we are have less appetite to take the high risk segment. What we did for the high risk, we created we call it a white label operation. So we have few partners that basically they are taking the high risk transactions to them. So they are still leveraging and using FlexFactor platform end to end, but they are the one that contract the merchant. They have the expertise on running high risk merchant. They have the techniques. So we just let them use our platform and let them serve the merchants with their expertise to do it properly.
Yeah, which is great, right? It gives merchants in different industries the opportunities to take advantage of the solution in a few different ways.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, super interesting. And one of the ways that, with our partnership with FlexFactor and the way that it's integrated onto the platform, through the low code interface, a customer can actually add a FlexFactor integration to their current Spreedly integration. So if their primary transaction went through a particular gateway or PSP, and they do experience a decline, we can actually help route that transaction to FlexFactor on the back end and take advantage of those flows you just described in a fairly seamless way that doesn't require the merchant to integrate another set of APIs and another suite of front end things. It's all kind of encompassed in our existing integration. So I think the two things work pretty well together.
Yes, absolutely. And the whole concept is that we are very much kind of a white label or a solution that behind the scenes serving the growth of Spreadly. So at the end of the day, the whole idea that a merchant could join to the service with a plug and play approach means that there are no development efforts, there are no any constraints. So the merchant just need to decide that they want to leverage the service. This is complementary to anything that has been done before. FlexFactor render our own service. So at the end of the day, the idea is to make the life of a merchant very simple. Just say, yes, we want to make more money, and we are here to help you to do it. At the end of the day, also Spreadly can really enjoy presenting to their merchant base a better approval rate, better results, better stickiness. So this is a great tool for the partnership to serve to the market onwards.
Yeah, I agree. I've never had a merchant say, "Oh, I can make more money." No, never mind. I don't want that.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly like
agree. So we talked about some high level things. Do you have any specific merchant examples or maybe case studies that you would talk about around, how a merchant can see some of these benefits and some real world results?
Yeah, so what I can share and happy to share, we went live almost 2 years ago. By now, we signed close to $120 billion of gross processing volume. Not all this volume went live because it takes us time to onboard all the merchants, but it is growing fast. The beauty is that we see now about 25% Q rate as average. When I say average, it's between the CIT and MIT, the real time and the subscription. This is growing all the time. So we're looking to hit bigger numbers in the future. But I would say that we are already processing big amount and big volumes. The Q rate is really promising, and it is even getting better. So at the end of the day, the impact on the merchant is amazing.
Yeah, that Q rate's really fascinating, right? Like if you stop and think about that, of your declines, you could get back 25, 24, 25% of those. That's a pretty meaningful number for most merchants.
Yeah, and imagine that a merchant that see an average, let's say 20% decline rate, and we cure 25% of that. This is an immediate impact of additional 5% that are real incremental revenues. And this is without counting all the non-direct financial impact, like the growth in lifetime value, like saving the losses that a merchant invests to the consumer acquisition cost. So there are direct impact, which is immediately around the 5 to 10%. And on top, you can see also non-direct impact that also hit the bottom line with a great growth for the merchant.
Yeah, that's a really compelling insights. And also, there's no restrictions on decline types, right? Whether it's insufficient funds or other types of soft declines, or maybe even hard declines, right? Those can all be handled by the system.
Yeah, so the beauty of the solution that we developed, that we're looking at each decline, we have a dedicated mechanism to analyze each decline and cure it following. So we are looking on all type of declines. It could be insufficient funds, it could be technical reason, issues, it could be fraud issues. We're just looking at all type of declines.
Yeah, super helpful too. So this is probably the question you get the most, right? So you talk about the benefits, and then the next question from a merchant is, but what does it cost me? Or are there any insights you can share with prospects around how should they think about building this into their ROI model, and kind of what are some of the costs, the processing costs, if you will, to FlexFactor?
Sure. So in most cases, we are charging on the range of 15%. And this is for most of the verticals that are in the industry. At the end of the day, a merchant has to look into this point as a dead money that we are bringing back to the ecosystem. So it is more than zero.
Right.
Also, it is important to realize that when we quote this price, we also take on us all the credit risk. We take on us all the processing fees. So at the end of the day, we are a new processor or a merchant of record that take everything on us to reprocess a case that was lost completely to the merchant and now come back as real money. So the pricing is, as I mentioned, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think tying it back to those other business KPIs you were talking about before of customer retention, it's more than just the cost of that single transaction.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about taking on some of the risk, and I assume there's some underwriting or something you do to your merchants before bringing them on board. Can you maybe give us a quick summary or insight on what does that merchant onboarding process look like commercially, and how does FlexFactor work with those merchants?
Yeah, sure. So the whole idea is to have a plug and play, which is a very fast and easy process to the merchant. So
Hmm.
we are leveraging different tools to do the underwriting. Of course, when a merchant want to join, there is a quick process that they submit an application. Within this application, there are some requirements that we place there to submit information, say a statement, for example. So we do collect some information, but the process is fast, and the whole idea is that within few hours to one day, a merchant go live. From the moment that they say, yes, we want it, in a very few hours, they should be live, up and running, and enjoy from the service.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think that's another interesting differentiator you offer where, a merchant who's looking maybe to sign up for a new mid or another account with a new PSP, that underwriting process can be really intense and take a long time. But because you guys are taking all the liability, you can kind of help streamline that process.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
The whole concept, again, as mentioned, is plug and play as fast as we can to take the merchant live without constraints. Of course, if it is a complicated merchant, a high-risk merchant with a lot of chargebacks, a lot of disputes, this is something that will raise a flag or lift a flag, and we will have to
Mhm.
assess and check it in more details. But all in all, when we're looking about or looking into low-risk merchant, mid-risk merchant, it should be easy, fast, and the benefits are there for everyone.
Mhm. Yeah, and through our partnership, hopefully we can match that speed of execution because now there's no extra integration to be enabled, right? Once the merchant gets the credentials from you, they can bring that to the platform and start processing almost right away, right?
Exactly. And this is the beauty of the
Mhm.
integration that FlexFactor and Spreadly perform. Exactly to hit a point that for a merchant, it will be an easy lift. So the fact
Mhm.
that we are integrating between us make the life of a merchant very soft and easy to connect and to start leveraging the service.
Mhm. Yeah, and you guys also encourage, maybe if a merchant wants to try, maybe they want to send 10% of their traffic or something, right? Those are things that also through the open payments platform on the Spreedly side, we can help orchestrate those events so that a merchant can actually kind of try and see the benefits, right?
Yeah, so basically we are encouraging the merchant to send the maximum volume because the benefits are there.
Hmm.
The fact that we are not charging a merchant to connect and we are not limiting a merchant to disconnect, it is all done in a very, very easy way. We link it to the preference of having the full volume to be sent to us. Now, of course, a merchant can decide to send a limited volume to
Hmm.
test it, but at the end of the day, they can run it for a day, they can run it for a week or for a month, and they will see the upside right away.
Yes, yeah, makes a ton of sense. So we talked about some of the technical onboarding and some of the upfront commercial onboarding. Another question that merchants typically ask is, how does that transaction work, and are they being paid immediately? Maybe certainly merchants' finance teams will care about the cash flow as well. How do you guys typically set up some of those commercial things for payouts for merchants?
All right. So we have a very sophisticated platform that we developed that come together also with a merchant portal and a dashboard that the merchant can see all the time, the transactions, the dispute, the settlement. So the merchant have full visibility on all the declines that we
Mm.
capture and assess onward. On top of that, we program the payout between once to twice a month. It is very much depends on our discussion and abilities to work with the merchant. At the end of the day, remember that this was money that was completely out of the ecosystem that we bring back. So we're trying to organize the payout in a way that makes sense for the merchant and makes sense for us.
Mhm. Yeah, Makes a ton of sense. So you touched on a little bit of the, the access to the reporting, but um, merchants have all kinds of other data available to them through the portal. Is that correct? Once they sign up?
So the merchant, they have, of course, they have their existing reporting, but when we come on top, they will get from us the portal, which will give them the access to see everything that related to the declines that we manage. So they will have full visibility. I don't know if we have more time later on in the webinar, but we have here Trey that he can walk the participant through the merchant portal and maybe show them some examples in the dashboard.
Yeah, that's great. I guess maybe kind of all that's left is, how does a merchant get started? Where do they start, and how do they get in contact?
So it should be also with the whole concept of having everything fast and easy. They can either approach the account executive at Spreadly or the sales manager at Spreadly and ask to join and forward to us the connection, the contacts to onboard the merchant, or the merchant can just go directly and book a calendar meeting with us. I think that we will present the link shortly. And from there, it should be just a quick call. We go through some logistics, and from there, we go live.
Awesome. Yeah, easy as that, right?
No
Yeah.
idea.
Yes, yes, yes. So I think we covered a fair amount of things in that space. I'm not sure we didn't go very deep on some of those topics, but Dev, is there any other points you want to land for folks on how they can think about and maybe try to pitch some of this solution internally as in their own companies?
Yeah, I think that the most important is to realize that this is a plug and play approach. There is no real lift to join to the service. When an enterprise, a company try to look for more revenues, they all the time invest in innovation, in
Mhm.
people, in marketing. So there are a lot of investment that involve in order to bring the next dollar. In our case, it is a click of a button saying, yes, we want, and it is there right away behind the corner. And this is the beauty
Mhm.
of the service that we render together with you as the leading orchestrator and processor in this flow. So this is a complete innovation that we're very much happy to bring to the Spreadly merchant base to take forward. So yeah, this is it. And maybe we can see with the audience if there are any questions that people may have and want us to clarify.
One question just came in where Maria was asking, I would like to understand how can Flex solve the issue of a decline for insufficient funds? And how does this complement with Spreedly's retry logic available on Spreedly?
All right, great. Yeah, it's a great question. We are last mile. So Spreadly has the tools to retry or to optimize. Spreadly do the magic that Spreadly currently doing. And then when everyone gave up, this is coming to us. Insufficient funds is sweet. It's a sweet spot for FlexFactor. We're coming from the high risk industry, served many years in a company called Experian. So this is really a bread and butter. And to the question, the insufficient funds, it's basically a situation when consumer do not have the money now. So this is in some cases could be mitigated because there might be money tomorrow or in a week or in 2 weeks. So this is to simplify as much as I can. But basically, insufficient fund is a great opportunity for us to take forward and cure a decline.
Yes. Zev, you're hired. I don't know if I can improve on that answer. So
Fantastic. We had another question just pop in from, I apologize, Andre. Would the information for such transactions to be updated on Spreedly once FlexFactor manages to charge the money from the customer? Would it display the initial amount and the amount after the fee?
I'm sorry, it was broken and I couldn't hear the entire question.
Yeah, so let's say when when FlexFactor recovers a transaction, is that updated on Spreedly? And would it display the amount that was, let's say it was $100 pair of shoes, and then the amount that that FlexFactor would settle after the fee?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, when we take the transaction to us, the transaction is appeared as a closed transaction with the merchant. Further, there are the reporting. So there are the settlements and the reporting. So whatever we need to pay to the merchant at a later point of time will appear on the settlements on the report that we submit to the merchant. In addition, these reports also reflect with Spreadly billing and reporting to the merchants. So overall, you'll have the reporting in a way that will segregate between the transactions that were properly managed by Spreadly and the transaction that following went to FlexFactor when the declines happened. So the merchant will see the full settlements amount segregated according to the events.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And on the Spreedly side, you'll see that transaction as part of your normal orchestration transactions. You'll see
Yeah.
the status and the response and everything from FlexFactor as it comes back in your API calls. So as Dev said, it all ties together.
Yeah.
Cool. Another question came in. Just trying to understand more about the integration timeline. So we talked about it a little bit earlier today. We want to make it as fast and as plug and play as possible. It sounds a little incredulous. So can you go into more of like, you know, what went into that, Zev, and how you see that evolving for merchants?
Yeah, so I don't know if Trey's in the session, but we can basically show the screen how many clicks are required to join the service. But the whole idea is that it is few clicks that the merchant need to mark, let's call it to mark FlexFactor as another gateway for the declines in the Spreadly orchestration. And from there, the service should be up and running.
Yes, yeah, agreed. The benefit of using an orchestration platform is that we've already built those connections to various PSPs, and so there's no front end integration, there's no incremental back end integration for a merchant if they're already using Spreedly to take advantage of the FlexFactor integration. So once they have their credentials and their essentially their login information, as I've mentioned, they can come through our portal, add that integration to their Spreedly dashboard, and start running transactions.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Very cool. If there's any other questions that are open. Oh, here we go. Eric just came in, 10 o'clock. I think I heard the US only for now. Are there any plans for global expansion? Also, I assume this supports all card types. Can it also support PayPal?
So PayPal is part of the roadmap. It is not ready yet. When we're talking about US, it could be European merchant, but we mainly target the US card holders. It will be expand in the next few months, but still we focus on the US. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll add to that from my perspective. You know, so while we serve U.S. merchants from a FlexFactor perspective, you know, the cardholder can be anywhere across the globe. And in fact, if anything, some of the prevailing wisdom that's out there of what decline rates are, you know, are next level when it comes to cross-border. So if you have a shopper from, as let's say, for instance, Japan, that's shopping on a U.S. site. You know, in my experience, decline rates can be as high as 40% on a cross-border basis. And so any incremental lift, you know, if that's a valuable corridor for you, can be quite impressive. So that's the intention here. And the intention is also to, as I've said, to expand to other markets as well. But as everyone here knows, the US opportunity is fairly large. So we focus right here on what's in front of us, and we'll get to others later. Cool. Any other questions from the crowd? In the interim, there's a poll that I'd like to actually issue just to kind of see what people are thinking in terms of how they manage their declines today, at least amongst this crowd. It'd be helpful to see. So I'm going to go ahead and get that rolling. Cool. So you should see it on your screen now. In the interim, if you have other questions coming in, please do raise your hand or pop it in the Q&A, and we'd love to be able to answer your questions.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I've mentioned, you know, you can always reach out to Spreedly via the website, you know, our contact us form, or if you have if you're an existing customer, to reach out through your account manager. We're happy to answer questions around the integration.
Yeah. I think one of the most fascinating things that I'll share while we're waiting for the poll results to pop up is um, the fact of the matter is that this works across uh, effectively every single modality of payment, right? Because this is something that historically there have been providers that do subscription retries, which, again, all due respect to them, but they're doing a dunning service and smart retries, which is interesting. But being able to do this across the initial subscription, the first time subscription transaction, where everything kind of keys off of that success, and being able to do this off of purchases as well. Realistically, that was only the realm of being able to cascade to a second or third processor for most merchants. There was no dedicated fully managed service there. So I think
Mhm.
that's been one of the most fascinating things to as at least when I speak to merchants talking about it, they're like, wait a second, you can do that?
Mhm.
It's definitely something different.
Yeah, one of the things we certainly see is, of the declines that we see on our platform, somewhere between 40 and 50%, depending on the time range you look at, usually are things like insufficient funds. And those are the things like, you were talking about Rahman and Zev that are really hard for merchant to kind of solve real time and to have that expertise on like that propensity to pay and no one wants to send someone to collections. That's costly and a terrible experience as well. So having a solution that can recover that customer is really important.
Yeah, of course. And at the end of the day, the beauty of having this algorithm that you don't need to go down the road to the collection. It's a smart algorithm that
Mhm.
identified the right moment to charge the consumer. And actually, if within 2 weeks we're not managing to do it, we write off the transaction. So,
Yeah. So the credit risk comes back to FlexFactor at the end of the day. So
Mhm.
it's a really nice perk or
yeah.
benefit to merchants for sure.
And actually, it's important point also to realize that we didn't mention earlier, it's not only the credit risk, but also from the moment that we act as a merchant of record, taking it on us, then chargebacks are confronted by us, disputes are
Mhm.
confronted by us. We settle back the amounts later on with the merchant, but we are really a front end for the flow.
Yes.
Absolutely. Cool. Another question came in. I'm really interested in understanding how hard declines are solved by Flex. I'm still not quite sure I fully understand how can a not fun situation be fixed or incorrect CVV or stolen card. Zeb, you want to take that one?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, and feel free also to complete my reply, the algorithm is checking each decline. So if it is insufficient fund or if it's a fraud, a suspect fraud that apparently we find as false positive, there are different errors. Our system and machine learning actually learn to look into each and every type of error and make a decision when similar behavior in the past, even though that this time was declined, could be still be cured and end up as a successful transaction. So this is relevant for each and every error that apparently exists in the payment ecosystem. You can see a lot of inefficiency in the ecosystem because you have issuer and acquirer, sometimes a CRM in the middle, a processor and a gateway, and is each of them able to define a decline by themselves for insufficient fund as example or for other reason. So the algorithm is really looking into this insufficiency, into the different reasons that decline happened, into the ability to cure that, and doesn't matter whether it's an insufficient fund or fraud or latency or connectivity, whatever. Our algorithm will do the data enrichment, the comparison of the historical data to the real data, and check the score and the ability for us to really cure it and turn it to a successful case. Feel free to add on top if I missed anything, Raymond.
I think you nailed it. I think what I will say philosophically is that at the end of the day, every modern merchant is running some sort of fraud filter on the front end because no one wants to facilitate fraud. And I think the way that we're looking at it is if it passes your fraud filter and you think that there's a reasonable shot that this should go through, don't get me wrong, we also run our own fraud checks as well. But like if it goes through and we look at it, then we have our own AI and machine learning system that is able to look at the transaction. We will also then say, hey, we are comfortable in some cases taking on this risk. We think that this transaction should have gone through. And at the end of the day, it's my job. I've led payments across the ecosystem at Adyen and Square and other places as well, to help see this through. And so it's my job to help figure out how to pull out all the bells and whistles and tips and tricks to help make it happen as a fully managed service. So from the merchant's perspective, the answer is, hey, we accepted that transaction, we bought that invoice from you. It's a done deal. And then at that point, it's between myself, the CFO, and the CEO as to how I'm able to actually end up processing it. Because if we don't, we have to eat the loss. And so that's a key point there.
Right. Yeah, and I think the other important thing for me as I think about, a payment stack is understanding your full funnel as a merchant of where some of those things are falling out at, like you guys called out of, is it drop off at checkout? Is it drop off after an issuer decline? Is it your some internal fraud rule declined, and understanding those things, and then piecing that whole strategy together with your primary PSP, any backups you may have, and then ultimately a factor strategy at the end to kind of get that last bit of things that are just not able to be recovered in another way.
Is there another question from Maria Fernanda?
Yeah. So does this mean that, for example, the cure of the insufficient fund situation would be retrying to capture in a week or so? How is this issue fixed if the gateway and the issuer mention is insufficient funds? So is that perhaps I'll answer this one. So what I would say is, Maria, we should probably do a deeper dive. We get happy to go deeper into kind of the permutations that are here. But in general, some of it is being willing to take on time, where again, I don't know your specific business, but if you are selling a pair of shoes, there's rarely a merchant that will ship a pair of shoes without having confirmation of an authorization in place. And so the idea here is that time does heal all wounds in some capacity, which could include insufficient funds. However, there are other tactics and mechanisms that are in place that will allow a payment to go through, even if there's a decline for insufficient funds. Unfortunately, if you've been around the industry as long as I have and being able to help push the bounds as long as I have, issuer processor models are not always perfect in terms of their responses. And so being able to help identify which ones are imperfect and possible mechanisms being able to make that go through is what we do all day, every day.
Let me just add to make sure that it covered the entire question. So the moment that insufficient fund error occur, and we decided to step in, it means that we are now taking the liability and responsibility to pay the merchant. So the transaction is basically closed. The merchant get the money and the consumer get the goods. There is a second instance that is coming into the place, which is FlexFactor now acting as a merchant of record. So from that moment onward, everyone in the ecosystem was solved. Now, within the next, let's say the second after, up to 2 weeks after, our system will identify the exact right moment that is the best moment to charge the consumer. And then as a merchant of record, we will authorize the card and charge the full amount from the consumer. So I hope that I answer your entire question.
Awesome. Cool. So we had a couple of responses come in on the poll just to kind of share what that looks like. So, the first question was, how often do you analyze your decline rate? And everyone pretty much responded monthly or more, which is about what I expected. I think it's one of those things that, it's something you keep an eye on as a payments team, but not something that you have to obsess over on a daily basis, for instance. But perhaps there's different perspectives on that one. The second question was, what's your top concern when it comes to declined payments? And there's a split between lost revenue and lost customers, and that's exactly how we see it, right? I think that's depends what area of the business you represent, but what we find is that usually like a head of e-commerce is caring about customers and being able to help keep customer acquisition and customer growth channel going, because that's where they focus on all day, every day. And lost revenue, the CFOs behind you saying, "Hey, let's make those numbers."
Yeah, it's a really good one, and I think that one's really it's more than just that one transaction. Sometimes even more than just that one customer. If someone takes to social media and starts talking about how brand X, declines their payment all the time. Now you start to see, that effect of reviews and things out there where maybe your customer acquisition even starts to suffer.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And then last question, what type of declines are you most focused on solving? And it was basically a split between soft declines, hard declines. Some people were not sure, it's, at the end of the day, I think at the end of the, what we say is average e-commerce decline rate 10 to 15%, in my experience. And so, if that's the case, anything that can be recovered is positive and accretive for a merchant. So, yeah. Cool. I think that covers it for now. Andy, Zeb, anything else that you want to mention?
No, just want to thank everyone that joined to this session. I hope that it was enjoyable, that you learned, and we hope to see you coming soon to join to the service.
Likewise, thank you for your time all. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.